Namaskar, welcome back to Media Scan. The failed assassination bid on former US President and current Republican candidate Donald J. Trump has not only shown glaring gaps in security, it has also exposed the preachy US media for the manner in which the incident was treated in their headlines, watering down the seriousness of the attack. Wild conspiracy theories and disinformation in the US legacy media has become the target of worldwide criticism. So viewers, will the US media, so fond of lecturing the world on journalistic ethics, principles, now care to look within? Let's discuss. And to go through this very interesting subject, I have here with me two interesting guests straight from the US. Joining me from Chicago right now is Avtans Kumar, senior journalist, well-known commentator on India-US affairs and an expert on the Indic activities in the US and the Western world. Welcome back to Media Scan, Avtans Kumar. Namaskar.
Namaskar, Smita. Thank you for having me on your show again.
And from Washington, D.C., well-known communications expert, has been on the communication strategy teams of various well-known people in the US, including former presidents, Anang Mittal. Welcome back, Anang Mittal.
Thank you for having me.
And I'll come to Avtans Kumar first. You know, I was going through some of the headlines in the media that came across various platforms just a little after the unfortunate the attack happened on former president, and some of them were clearly showing as if there was a deliberate attempt to water down the seriousness of the attack, or perhaps the reporters really had very little clue before they went to file their stories. Now when it concerns the security of someone as important as a former president, what would you say are your first thoughts about the US media's treatment of this entire crisis?
It has definitely exposed the double standard of US media in how they deal with some of the things, some of the headlines and news. We have seen this repeated over and over again. So, for example, even in general attack, if there is a perpetrator who belongs to a certain race, it will be highlighted differently than with the other race. If it's a crime against, if it's a crime that they do not feel that needs to be highlighted, they will treat totally differently. We have also seen this kind of how they have treated in Indian media the Prime Minister Modi. So I think your audience will empathize with this kind of situation. So and this double standard is not totally unknown. We have seen this over and over again in many instances, many cases. So it was surprising, but shocking, but not surprising, the treatment.
You know, somebody said it was just a case of loud noises. Somebody even went to the extent of saying that, he just fell down and was carried away. Now, what baffles the whole world is the fact that you could have made, such headlines, perhaps in a situation where, people didn't really know what happened. But here it was all going live. You being, present there in the US and following the incident, particularly this incident live when it happened, how would you look at these headlines? Some of them are clearly howlers.
Yeah, they had, so there was definitely, I think, was a clear agenda not to, and you can give them a credit for not making, rumors or conspiracy theories, not giving wind to those kind of things, but you have to totally understand, you have to present the news in a way it happens. That is the place where the Western media, US media has failed, because if it's a kind of crime that happens where it benefits one kind of ideology, they will certainly highlight the race, the creed, the religion of people, versus if there is another crime, it will be hidden.
Okay, okay. Allow me to bring in Anand Mittal here. Mr. Mittal, you know, we are seeing wild conspiracy theories going on. I'm not going to go into some of those very, you know, over the top kind of stories. But certainly one very definite line is visible. The Democrats are saying that it is indeed a serious matter, the attack that happened on Donald Trump. But it is a fallout of their own politics. Some of them going to the extent of saying it could have been an inside job. And the inside job phrase has been visible even so many days after the attack. On the other hand, the Republicans are saying the way Donald Trump has been vilified, has been attacked, you know, given names like Nazi and Hitler, willy-nilly, the Democrats have ensured that they you know, arouse passions and they incite people with their language so that somebody will go and make a move like what we saw. Which of the two do you think is more credible, or is any of them credible?
Well, it's no surprise that the Republicans have always had an antagonistic relationship with the news media, and I think that's part of why the news media sort of dislike Trump very much, because he's the first Republican who's actually, you know, made his accusations stick, and they've actually had to, you know, they've clowned themselves, they've shamed themselves in the attempt to go after him so many times, and yet he still seems to keep winning. And I think that's part of how you have to understand this, the media reaction to this assassination attempt. They very much wanted to downplay it because it was such a shocking event. It is something like this has not happened for almost 40 years in American history. So this could have been, you know, a really, really huge tragedy. And I think it gave a huge boost to Donald Trump's image. And so the media and the Democrats are desperately, very desperately trying to downplay this in the middle of a presidential cycle where their candidate seems to be going down in the polls. He almost may drop out.
A specific question, Mr. Mittal,
yes.
Just a specific query. Do you think the nature of campaign run by the Democrats may have had a role to play in the way the 20-year-old, you know, went ahead and tried to shoot down the former president?
Well, it's obvious that this person was somebody who had mental issues or other, you know, motivations. But I will definitely say that the way the media has treated Donald Trump over the last 8 years since he became, you know, presidential candidate has contributed to this dehumanizing language. And the Democrats have, you know, pretty much followed the same because they very much act in concert with the news media, the mainstream news media, and call Trump very dehumanizing names. And I think that's definitely something that needs to tone down. That kind of rhetoric needs to come down. Even in the speech Trump gave yesterday, you know, he tried very hard to not use a lot of negative language. He only mentioned Biden once. He only mentioned the shooter once.
Yes.
So he himself is showing that he's trying to, you know, tone down his own rhetoric because
And
he
in
realizes
fact,
that it's a problem. So if he
yes,
realizes it,
yes.
I mean, if Donald Trump says, "Hey, we need to stop saying all these negative things," you know, that sort of dehumanize people. Maybe the media should take notice of that.
And in fact, I was reading the comments of an expert who was associated with Donald Trump's team till recently. He said the way some of the legacy US media, and these are platforms that are followed the world over, the way they have treated this entire very serious incident almost shows that the left-leaning media has, you know, sort of given up its claim to be called journalists at all.
Yeah, definitely in the reaction, the way the headline said that, you know, he fell or that there was an incident. Now the media may say, oh, we were trying to just, you know, make sure that we were, our facts were right. But it was very obvious from the moment the video went out that it was an assassination attempt. And they very, very carefully tried to avoid that term, assassination attempt or a, you know, attempt on Donald Trump's life, because they, in my opinion, they were very much trying to downplay this incident in the middle of a presidential cycle that was going to be beneficial to Donald Trump. And it has been beneficial. There has been a wave of sympathy, and the media were desperately trying to not give him that sympathy because they've painted him as a would-be dictator, essentially. You know, they say Hitler and say all kinds of things. He's going to, you know, destroy democracy, and the
enemy of democracy and all that.
that.
Let me come back to Avtans Kumar. Avtans Kumar, first I want your reaction very quickly on what Mr. Mittal just said about the fact that, of course, they may have been trying to ascertain their facts, but somewhere they didn't want to make it look like an assassination attempt, which it was, because it might bring political dividends for Mr. Trump.
Yeah, it's not a stretch to say that the U.S. corporate media is an extension of Democratic Party. It's a PR arm. Look at all the people who are in the corporate media, for example, CNN or in New York Times. Many of them are former or current or would be Democrat operative. For example, George Stephanopoulos. He was the press communication. He was in the communications team of President Clinton. That's just an example. So, or look at the Jen Psaki. She being after being President Biden's press secretary, she joined MSNBC. So they are.
So there is a cozy relationship between the Democrats and the mainstream US media. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a PR arm of the Democrat National, DNC, that we call it the Democrat Party. It's absolutely, that's what it is. And
okay, that brings me to my next question, Avtans Kumar. While this whole debate was on in the US, we saw its reflection in India in some way. In fact, just few hours after it happened, in the sense that the Bharatiya Janata Party blamed the Congress party, particularly its leaders like Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi, and also some other opposition leaders, saying they have also been trying to run a similar campaign against Mr. Modi for many years, and most particularly in the just concluded Lok Sabha elections, when they tried to label Mr. Modi as also as being someone who will jeopardize the constitution and democracy, and accusing him of fascist, bringing in fascism into the government. And so they said, the fallout of this whole rhetoric seems to be what we saw happening to Donald Trump, and they expressed apprehension that such a campaign can always lead to these kind of disastrous fallouts, and that has triggered a huge debate here in India too.
Yes, absolutely. But the double standard part is that when somebody, let's say, if I'm giving you example from India because you brought in India, if someone from BJP or RSS or Rich Hindu Parishad says something, that will be treated very differently than what some of the opposition parties in India who say. You can see the same thing here also. It's very similar. It's the ideology. It's the left-wing ideology. It's an ideology of violence. It's an ideology of chaos. It's an ideology of destruction. Wherever they are, in whatever form they are, that's what they aspire to do.
Right. Anang Mittal, on the same issue which Avtans has just raised, I was looking at some of the headlines, which were running either during the election campaign, when the election campaign was on in our country, in India, or just before the elections kicked off. And some of those headlines are very clearly saying, particularly from the Western media, that India's press freedom has declined drastically in the 10 years of the Modi regime. Some of them are saying that Indian media has become biased, and in recent years its decline has been very, very noticeable. Some even said there is a particular tilt in the Indian media and putting the blame on the government willy-nilly. So you see, the US media becomes so preachy when it comes to countries like ours, particularly the media, the Indian media under the Modi government, but also some other, rising democracies. Why doesn't the US media like to look within and try to introspect, seeing the kind of headlines that came out after Mr. Trump's attack?
Yeah, I think that's true because, really the last 6 months that have happened have really been very, very degrading and sort of delegitimizing for the U.S. media. Look at the way the issues with President Biden's health came to the fore after the debate. and the media immediately had to pivot, and some people even apologized because they had been covering up for President Biden's health issues. They had been told by their friends in the DNC, the Democrat Party, and the Biden White House that nothing was wrong. And then when it was clearly obvious that something was wrong, they had to immediately apologize. And the same thing with this assassination attempt, where a lot of people in the media were saying, Trump is a would-be dictator. He's a Hitler in the making. He's going to create more violence and chaos in America. And then when violence was visited upon Mr. Trump, they had to immediately step back and apologize. And in fact, some very hard left programs were even taken off the air for a day because they were so afraid of what this language that was continuing would result in if it happened just a day after his assassination attempt. So I think the media needs to do some serious introspection and really after this election cycle is over, and if maybe Mr. Trump is the president, that really look at how they're going to treat the new incoming administration and how they're going to really use their bias and get over their own biases essentially about a person they don't like.
So do you think if Mr. Trump becomes president again, what will be his relationship with the legacy media? How do you foresee?
I think it will still be antagonistic because there's no way. Most people in the media, unfortunately, these are not the journalists of the old days when they tried their very best to be objective and neutral. As Avtansuji said, as they say in America many times, the mainstream media is just an arm of the Democrat Party. So there will be a lot of pressure if Trump becomes president. There will be a lot of pressure on a lot of people to continue the same rhetoric, to continue the same language, and they will continually keep tripping over themselves because they won't be able to help their own personal biases. And that's really the problem we have in the country right now, is that people are unwilling to be objective and neutral when it comes to the facts and when it comes to certain things, and literally everybody only wants to fight with their team and fight against the other team.
Avtans Kumar, do you also believe the same, that there'll be a lot of pressure to continue the same rhetoric and they may be tripping over themselves in an attempt to do that? Or do you think there is possibility of a course correction if Donald Trump becomes president?
No, I agree with Anand. It's not possible and it's not going to happen because that's the character of the US media right now, currently. But also I would like to add, note here that the US media, the mainstream legacy media, is dying in the US. And there is not much, credibility-wise, they've already lost credibility. Very few people, if you look at Pew Research and other kind of research, you will see that not many people, not many Americans trust American media. So you have to keep that in mind. And also, the legacy media caters to a specific group of people. They're very rich people, but they're also very educated people, and they are trying to buy their subscription and all that. So as long as they keep buying them, they will survive. But other than that, it's almost dead in the US in terms of mainstream media, in terms of credibility, and also in terms of economy, if you can see that, the circulation and things like that.
So I really want to know, now that Donald Trump has accepted his official candidature for the Republican Party, and President Biden is currently, recovering from his COVID-19 situation, Anand Mittal, what do you think is going to be the position of the Republican candidate? Is it a done thing that Mr. Biden is going to be repeated as the candidate? It's really quite foggy at the moment.
Yes, unfortunately, it is unclear as to what will happen. President Biden is currently in Delaware recuperating from COVID-19. There's been a lot of speculation in the media. There's been a lot of rumors going around. His campaign has officially had to say that he is not thinking about stepping down. But of course, that happens all the time in American media and in American history. People say, nothing is happening, and then all of a sudden the next day they, end up stepping down or making a press conference. So we'll have to wait and see what happens most likely on Monday. People keep saying there's going to be an announcement, but it's very unclear at the moment. And I would say at the present, because of all of these various issues that the Democrat Party is having, it's President Trump's race to lose. And I think he gave an amazing speech last night. So the momentum certainly seems to be with him.
And Avtans Kumar, carrying forward from what Mr. Mittal has just said, I know it's early days, But considering the mood in the USA and what we are seeing being commented upon, and you also touched upon it, both of you gentlemen in fact, how do you think the trajectory of the US-India relations going forward, considering Donald Trump becomes the president?
As for U.S.-India relationship, I do not see much change happening on the level, any level. The relationship will continue to grow. It is, I call it, in a cruise control mode. There are various speed bumps here and there, and some of them because of the ideological differences in the current administration, both in India and in the U.S. Owing to that, there have been bumps, and everybody knows about all those bumps. But I don't think that the situation will change. President Trump is a very transactional president, so he knows what to do, and he, just like India will be working for its own benefit. I expect President Trump to work on U.S. interest, but we have seen that in the past, the relationship between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi, they have been very cordial, and they have worked very successfully in advancing their own interests.
Okay. Anang Mittal, do you subscribe to what Avtan's just said? And second question, very quickly, I have very little time left with me. How clear would you say are the prospects of Mr. Trump becoming president once again?
I think currently the prospects are fairly good. I would say 55-45 kind of a race currently, judging by how badly President Biden and the Democrats are doing. Their hair is on fire. They're running around, waiting for the sky to fall, essentially. I do think that the relationships will improve a little bit just because of how Trump has had better relationships with Prime Minister Modi than Mr. Biden has had. It is on cruise control, the relationship at the moment. But only Trump has done multiple rallies, almost election-like rallies with Mr. Modi. So I think that kind of spirit will continue. That spirit of friendship and amity will certainly improve than it has with President Biden or VP Kamala Harris. There was some hope that maybe that would improve, but I think it will only improve when President Trump is in office because he wants to be seen to be more friendly with world leaders. And I think Mr. Modi is a respected world leader, and he's not on the level he doesn't get the same level of hatred that Putin and other world leaders in Asia
and
get.
Incidentally,
so I think he will try
Prime Minister Modi was one of the first world leaders to express his concern about the attack on Donald Trump. You would have all noticed.
Absolutely, and that did not go unnoticed. I can tell you that from the campaign. They do take care of things like that.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm afraid that's all the time we had, but there are lots of things left to discuss. Today, we were more interested in understanding why the double standards in the US media always make themselves so starkly visible whenever something happens in their own backyard. But to take forward this discussion in another episode, I must thank both of you here. Avtans Kumar, thank you very much for joining us at an ungodly hour for you. Do join us again. And Anang Mittal, likewise, thank you very much for joining us at such a short notice. Thank you, gentlemen. Please connect with us again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
The US prides itself in being one of the biggest and the strongest democracies, which enjoys the right to talk to other people, in fact talk down many times to other countries about the strength of democracy, the biases in media and press freedom. Considering all these principles, it is a tad rich to see the kind of headlines that emerged from the US legacy media moments after the assassination bid on former President Donald Trump. Perhaps it is time that countries like the US and other Western nations must look at what is ailing their media before they decide to comment on countries like India and several others. On that thoughtful note, it's a wrap-up on Media Scan for this weekend. Do join us next weekend with another interesting subject. Till then, namaskar.